Hello and welcome to Inside Sports. I'm Wes Decker, and you've probably heard it for years, whether coming from a teacher, parent, or coach. This should sound familiar. Use your head. It generally means think, be intelligent, tap into your IQ a little bit. Therefore, it's mainly a cerebral command, one based on eliciting a mental and not a physical response. Unless maybe you're on the soccer field, then it could certainly be construed as physical and literal. So while use your head probably resonates with most of us, what about use your butt? I'll go out on a sizable limb here and say not as much, if at all. Although when you use your head and think about it, there are plenty of songs that laud using one's posterior. There's everything from shake your booty to doing the butt to one that clearly states that the larger bums come, the better. And I cannot lie, that would be the classic I like big butts. Just where am I going with all of this? Well, I have an example to submit to you of how when people use their butts instead of their heads, the result is less than favorable. Last week, an Ohio man even proved it can be illegal. According to a radio report, the man was pulled over by Youngstown police for a license plate violation. But, or should I say, however, things took a bizarre twist from there. When the officer asked the man to step out of the car, he noticed a strange lump, later described in the police report as, quote, not consistent with the human anatomy, end quote. When the man was asked about the lump, he admitted to hiding 76 pills, including Xanax and oxycodone, in it. And guess where it happened to be? Yep, you can't make that up. This is why not only does crime not pay, it evidently can be quite uncomfortable. And I thought, get your head out of your butt was good advice. The question is, who counted those pills to make sure all 76 were accounted for? I don't know about you, but as the arresting officer, I'm delegating that responsibility. Here on the show, I'm hands-on and up to my elbows in everything today, which includes a preview of next weekend's St. James Invitational Tournament with Saints head boys basketball coach and tourney organizer Dan Preet, girls basketball with Herald Mail insider Bob Parsolini, and I start with Dan Kaufman joining me for a look back at last Friday's history-making County Indoor Track and Field Championship meet. That's right after this.
Champions are not merely born, they're forged in the crucible that is flag football. With equal parts turf, pigskin, and heart. That's why Buffalo Wild Wings donates to boys and girls clubs across the country to not only help thousands of kids learn about teamwork on and off the field, but to help them fulfill their destiny, to shred defensive lines, terrorize the secondary, and emerge bonded as true champions.
When you're sick or hurt and can't be seen by your regular doctor, you just want to feel better faster. Make a convenient appointment or simply walk into Meritus Urgent Care, where you can receive attention from our caring professionals, from sprains and strains to sore throats, earaches, and other ailments that are not life-threatening. Meritus Urgent Care has you covered with on-site labs and x-rays and much more. We're conveniently located on Pennsylvania Avenue in Hagerstown at the Sylvania Center. Feel better faster with Meritus Urgent Care.
Welcome back to Inside Sports. We continue now with Herald Mail Assistant Sports Editor Dan Kaufman. The reason that National Geographic Traveler decided to rate Hagerstown as the 26th best groomed small city in the U.S. You're the face of that.
I wouldn't have any knowledge
Not
of
on
that.
top, but the face, I think.
I do this myself.
Well, it looks great,
to
though.
whatever degree of success, I'll let everybody else be the judge.
Trying to give you a little dap,
but
that's
yeah,
all.
No,
you won't even take it.
I haven't seen a barber in 10 years.
Well, and they're not too unhappy about that, from what I understand. I've talked to the barbering community, and that's what they've told me. Anyway, let's go to indoor track and field.
Please.
The county championships decided last Friday at HCC, Dan, and I think we both walked out of there saying, that's one of the most exciting county championship meets we've seen in a long time, and unpredictable.
Absolutely. It was really fun as the results came in to see how tight both of these team races were. The boys' team race went down to the final event. The girls' team race was tight. I mean, it was known before the final results were known, but still also a tight race. And at the end of the day, we get a first-time Washington County girls' team champion in South Hagerstown, which was, in my opinion, I mean, there were basically two major headlines. We'll get to Andre Turre of South's boys in a minute, but the other major headline was South Hagerstown's girls breaking through and getting the county title.
Yeah, what tipped the balance for South Hagerstown? Because we talk so much about the Boonesboro depth. And in the end, did South turn the tables on Boonesboro?
Well, you got to start. I mean, you got to start with South won 6 of the 13 events, so there's maximum points, and it starts with Emily Alexander winning 2 individual events, the 1600 and 3200. She's been, but Boonesboro's had great distance running, especially on the girls' side for all these years, the 6 years that they won the county title consecutively, but maybe not as strong there this year. And so someone like Emily Alexander comes along and can put together some 20 points in those 2 events, and it makes a big difference this year. But South has other depth elsewhere too. I mean, they had the top 2 high jumpers in Sadie Leisinger and Lanisha Chance, both clearing 5 feet. They got a huge sprint victory out of Sita Sharif, upsetting Lauren Daniels of Smithsburg in the 55. They won the 4x200 relay, and of course the transfer from North, Jordan Morris, coming over and winning the 55 hurdles as well.
I thought the versatility of Morris went a long way too, because not only winning in the hurdles, but then also significantly showing up in the shot put and the high jump too.
Right, stuff that she's done throughout her career. Such a versatile, strong athlete, and again, just an example of it's not just the stars for South. They had some depth behind this too.
And when the points were this important, because it wound up being that close at the end, I think it's just magnified even more. And it's not to say that Boonesboro didn't have some terrific performances too. Right. Cameron Harper sort of doing what she does.
Right. Yeah, winning the 800 and the 500. Had herself the typical Cameron Harper day that we expect out of her. Boonesboro won the 4x800 relay. They won the 4x400 relay as well. Obviously had some kids produce some depth. I mean, they put up 133 points on the board, which is a totally respectable outing. It's just South put 143 on the board, and they got, Boonesboro just got beat this one time, and it wasn't like Boonesboro didn't show up, just South went out and earned it.
Well, I think this is a positive for both teams going forward.
Yeah, and Boonesboro's obviously got the 1A region and state meets coming up, and that's going to be a motivating factor for them, and nobody's going to count them out in those 2 meets at all.
No.
And for South, I mean, this has got to be, this is the most thrilling girls season they've ever had. They've got to be super pumped going into, conference and regional meets. And looking to see what they can do on those levels.
How about over on the boys' side, where Boonesboro just does get past South Hagerstown, or rather past North Hagerstown, and South Hagerstown was in the mix too. So really, I mean, it was a 3-team battle, although it came down really to Boonesboro and North, with Boonesboro winning by the 2 points.
Only 8 points separating those 3 teams in the end, and they were neck and neck throughout. South had to kind of dig a little bit later. The high jump, the boys' high jump, which South is very strong at, that result came in late. So for most of the meet, it looked like a Boonesboro-North Hagerstown race. And North actually looked like it might have it when it won the 4x400 relay, but the last thing that came in was the boys' high jump. And Boonesboro got 4th, 6th, and 8th place points, and that was enough to offset North's advantage going into that last event as far as the results came in. Just a thrilling meet. For Boonesboro, Donovan McClellan had a huge day in the 500 and the 800, dipping under 110 in the 500 for the first time. They also...
Nick
Kidwell, going over 55 feet for the 3rd time in 3 meets this season.
And a guy who was not happy with his day there. Yeah, it's pretty good to be unhappy and still throw 55-plus feet.
He wants that county indoor record. He wants to get that mark from J.R. Lowry because he's already thrown 55-2 this year. He's only an inch from that mark, and he knows it's there. It's just a little frustrating that he hasn't gotten it yet.
How about Brandon Gassaway from North Hagerstown?
Sure.
We haven't talked about him a lot this season, but he showed that he's a wily guy on the track.
Yeah, ran smarter. I mean, his times weren't necessarily blow-away times, although there's certainly the 1600 time of 4:41 is more than respectable, but he just ran smart races. He sat on the shoulders of the leaders in both of those races and just waited till the last lap or two to make his decisive move. And it was, it was smart racing. It's the kind of racing that will bode well going forward in region and state type meets. And, he showed that experience really does matter.
And the guy you mentioned earlier, Andre Ture, don't blink because you'll miss him.
Yeah, I mean, he posted the 3rd fastest 55 hurdles time in the country.
In the country?
In the country, that is correct. 7.33. He lowered his county indoor record all-time county record by 22 100ths of a second. And this is an event where once you've run 7.55, there's not a lot of extra time to get. But his start in the final, in the 55 hurdles final at the county meet, was absolutely sensational. He had a two-step lead on a good hurdler in Sam Ewing of Smithsburg before he got to the first hurdle, which is insane, and it just continued from there. I know the people who are doing the timing on the meet, they took a look at that time and they were just like, whoa.
Yeah.
So
he also won the 300 and was third in the high jump.
Yeah, and he took 3/4 of a second off his PR in the 300 too. So getting down in when you're running low 36 territory, you're doing some work. He's a sensational athlete, obviously proven why he was a state champion at Oakland Mills, and I know he's excited for what he was able to do at the county meet, and we'll see what else he can do. Obviously, some big meets left.
Yeah, phenomenal day for him. CMC Championships coming up this Friday for indoor track and field. Dan, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
I'm back right after this. Bob Parsolini joins me for girls basketball in just a moment.
At Hamilton Nissan, we know you've got places to go, so let's travel together. The Nissan Rogue, plenty of room for you, and plenty of room for him. With nearly 40 cubic feet of cargo space, everyone will be using the Rogue for everything, all the time. And on occasion, you'll find an evening for yourselves, and the Nissan Rogue will be right there with you. Hamilton Nissan, let's travel together. Come see us on the dual highway.
At home, amid protest, questions were asked.
As the Vietnam debate raged, for those who fought,
from all walks of life, we went where our country told us to go.
And sometimes we had to say goodbye to friends.
the Joint Veterans Council of Washington County asks you to join with them and exercise the freedom of choice Vietnam vets helped ensure to honor their service and sacrifice with a monument in their honor.
Freedom is not free. Donate today to the Vietnam War Veterans Monument.
Welcome back to Inside Sports. We continue now with girls basketball. And joining me is Herald Mail insider Bob Parsolini. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, we wound up at the same place on Saturday, Heritage Academy, with Heritage hosting the Smithsburg Leopards in what turned out to be an intriguing basketball game to me. Goes to overtime, and Smithsburg, I would say, survives that game, winning 49-44. What were your impressions?
Well, intriguing was the best word for that, because I was kind of looking forward to seeing this one all week when I knew I was going to it, because it was just the comparison there. I mean, Heritage has been pretty successful, and they have some players that are considered to be pretty good in the area. And Smithsburg's got some talent, but they're young, and everybody was hurt. I think everybody was wearing a Band-Aid somewhere, you know. And so it was but Smithsburg is getting everybody back. So it was one of those things where it's going to, you got to see how it's going to play out. And it ended up being, I don't think it played out as well as it should have, but it played out kind of in an exciting way. And I think part of it was because both those teams had played consecutive days, and I think Smithsburg had played 3 games in 4 days, so I think fatigue entered this game.
Yeah, and Smithsburg got off to such a good start in that game. They opened up at halftime what was a 25-15 lead over Heritage. And even to begin the second half, it looked like Smithsburg was just putting more distance between itself and the Eagles, and they were as they opened that lead up even more. And even into the fourth quarter, Heritage only had 22 points on the board, trailed 35-22, and then all of a sudden they run off 15 unanswered points in a span of 2 minutes and 2 seconds. And you look at the scoreboard, and it's almost hard to believe if you've been there watching the game from start to that point. Heritage is up 37-35, and it seemed like all the momentum was on Heritage's side. Smithsburg was going to get closed out in this game, and the Leopards just continued to fight. I think that's what I take away from this. Both teams, even though they probably weren't at their best, as you point out, fatigue factoring in, they just grinded it out. The competitors in them really came to the fore at the end, and even though perhaps the plays they made weren't the ones that they would normally make, it still made it quite an exciting game all the way to the finish.
Well, I think early in the game, Smithsburg turned Heritage a bit tentative. It didn't seem like anybody wanted to shoot for Heritage. I think the Smithsburg kind of covered up Markayla Hoy, who's one of the top scorers in the county. I think their pressure, bothered Heritage, and that helped them build a lead. They were getting out on the break, they were getting down the floor, they were scoring. And Heritage didn't put up much of a fight because they didn't put up very many shots in that span. Malin Patey gets like 2 really quick fouls, has 3 by halftime. That changes the complexion a little bit because they're deep but not that deep. And all of a sudden everything's going against them. But first, I think Smithsburg kind of looked at it and said, all right, we got the lead, all we have to do is protect it. And then secondly, all of a sudden, I think Heritage turned around and decided we're going to press.
Yeah.
And they pressed, and that bothered Smithsburg. And Coach Chip Bagdale for Smithsburg says, we press, but we don't like to be pressed. And there's a lot of teams like that out there.
And that 1-3-1 press for Heritage just continued to turn Smithsburg over and over and over. And then all of a sudden, their shots were going in as defense turned into offense.
Well, and it was because they had the flow going. I mean, it's kind of like football, playing the short field. You're picking off the ball at the half court mark, and you're beating everybody down the floor because most of the offense, or most of Smithsburg's defense is down there to go heading to the basket. So you're getting down there with the 2-on-1s and the 3-on-2s and finishing. And, in that stretch, Markayla Hoy did all the hard work from the end of the first quarter to the beginning of the third quarter to keep them in the game. She scored like 13 straight points in that stretch. And then all of a sudden, when it started getting to the point where everybody could get involved, everybody did, and all of a sudden, bang, they're ahead.
Yeah, and again, it was a very surprising turnaround in a short period of time. And then it was up to Bailey Grove to sort of rescue Smithsburg and get that game to overtime. A couple of clutch free throws and then a putback basket with 21.7 seconds left in the fourth quarter, which would send it to overtime, tied at 39. And to me, she was clutch in the overtime then too. I think altogether she scored 9 points, as it turned out, in the final minute 35 of the fourth quarter and overtime, helping Smithsburg pull out the win. Heather Barnes with the critical shot for Smithsburg, though, that put them ahead, a three-pointer, as you said in your story. Very quick look at the basket. She made the most of it, though, wound up with 15 to lead Smithsburg.
Well, I was watching her because she likes to shoot that three, and she's usually about the same spot, which is just to the left side of the top of the key, at least the way that they align it. And it comes around, and every time she got the ball, it was like, look, you see her go. But Hoy or somebody else would get over there and stick a hand in her face. And on this particular play, Heritage seemed to get over just a heartbeat late, and she saw it and she jacked it up and it went in. And it was huge. That was a big momentum turn right there, because that game, was there for Heritage to win. And then you speak about Grove. I mean, she was sort of eliminated out of that game because Smithsburg wasn't really pounding the ball inside a lot. They had a couple of set plays where they fed it in and they got the layup, but it wasn't to Bailey Grove, who's usually the one doing that. And she went and took it home. I mean, she got in her spot, her comfort zone, and she pounded it in those situations and got the points they needed to get to where they were.
Yeah, she put them on her shoulders to get that game to overtime, and then Smithsburg ultimately pulling it out by 5. The lines were very important in that game. The free throw stripe, Heritage not taking advantage, missing 16 free throws. Smithsburg was 10 of 16, conversely, and then three-pointers. Smithsburg knocked down 5. Heritage only made 1, so a lot of difference there as it relates to points. Now Smithsburg back to even at 7-7 as this week starts. Lexi Henderson possibly coming back in the near future for them, which would be a big boost. Heritage now 10-4 overall, having lost 2 of its last 3. But, anytime a game goes to overtime, the excitement level ramps up, and it was kind of a quiet gym for a long time in there. You could hear the ball bounce a lot. There wasn't a lot of reaction, but at the end came down to something that was truly exciting. Bob, thanks for being here this week. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm back right after this. I've got Dan Preet, boys head basketball coach from St. James, here to talk St. James Invitational and more in just a moment.
Antietam Broadband's Flight Gigabit service is ultra-high-speed internet delivered by a direct fiber connection. We are one of the few communities in the country to have it. But what does it mean? It means businesses will want to move here, which means more jobs, better jobs. It means access to world-class infrastructure for healthcare, education, and nonprofits. It means enhanced social and economic well-being. That's why it won the 2017 Leading Edge Award from the Chamber of Commerce. Flight Gigabit from Antietam Broadband, changing how people connect.
Welcome back to Inside Sports. We continue now with boys basketball, and I'm joined by St. James head coach Dan Preet. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's good to have you here. I know you've been doing a lot of work, in particular in organizing the St. James Invitational Tournament. Tell me about that, because I know it has to be a labor of love for you.
Right. In years past, I was able to travel and experience some really good tournaments. And as a child, I got a chance to come to this tournament with my father and really appreciated the impact that tournament made on a lot of teams, players in the area. And once I became part of St. James, it was something that I really wanted to help bring back to the community and to the school. And, we've done that, and we're in our third year, and it's really taken off. We're excited about it. Have some really good teams, but the work that goes into it, luckily I have great volunteers and a family and community at St. James that helps out, and great supporting cast with the administration that we can really put it all together and get it rolling.
And what have you put together for us this year?
Well, we have 8 teams coming in, and 7 teams coming in. We're the 8th. But we have teams from all over the country. Finley Prep is coming in from Las Vegas, Nevada. Sunrise Christian is coming in from Wichita. St. Benedict's is coming in from New Jersey.
The two-time defending champion.
Two-time defending champion. And the highest ranked team, I think, going into the tournament will be between them and Finley. And then Vashon will be a very interesting team to watch coming in out of St. Louis, who has had some really good teams in the past. A coach named Tony Irons that does a wonderful job, and his team was nationally ranked at the beginning of the year. And they have some really good young talent and play a different style than I think this area is used to. And I think a lot of people will enjoy watching them play because they are really, truly up and down the court the entire game.
How do you make all of this happen?
It starts, it's about a year process. It takes a while, and we on the phone a lot. We're watching a lot of different teams, and a lot of legwork in the area to get teams or businesses to support us, and getting the all the ins and outs of the tournament going. It's a lot, but we have a great community here that helps out with it.
What's the most positive thing for St. James relative to this tournament?
I think the bringing in and being able to witness that next level of excellence, and also helping the community also to see that in the same light. Where sometimes these athletes that come in or you see on TV a lot, you never see the hard work that goes into it. And when you get to see them up close and how hard they really work at their skill and their craft, not only as an athlete, but as a student, being able to travel and then get their work done and all those types of things, you can start to appreciate in a greater light, and you get to learn something a little bit more about these kids that are growing into men. And sometimes we take for granted that stuff when we watch them at that next level. But there's a lot that these kids go into and a lot that they sacrifice and a lot that their families and people and schools sacrifice, and it's kind of neat for us to all see it at one place.
What's the enthusiasm level that you sense with people as it relates to this tournament now being in year number 3 since you've resurrected it?
Right. I think it's growing again. You know, every year we had a plan to get it a little bit bigger and a little bit better. And I think we're probably 2 years ahead of schedule, to be honest with you, where we have such a great field. But the enthusiasm, for example, I'm trying to keep my own team focused on our game that's happening this week before next week because they're looking so much forward to this tournament.
Right.
So it's really building because, you know, we're getting a lot of calls from the national level, and a lot of people in the area want to see this. So it's a tough to do, but, you know, we got to keep everybody focused at the same time.
And it's a 3-day tournament, Thursday, February 1st,
right.
Friday the 2nd, and then Saturday the 3rd. And teams will wind up being 1 through 8 before it's all said and done. This is a tournament bracket, so either you're first or you're last by the time it's all over. How do you approach this with your team, knowing the caliber of the squads who are coming in?
It's a championship style, which is important to me, and that's what I like to do, and I think it's very important for our kids to learn how to compete. And I think you have to treat it with your own team as it's one game at a time. You know, we kind of look forward to some of those really big national teams, but we have to get through one game at a time to get to that, you know, get a chance to be able to step on the floor with those teams. Plus, it also gives our team, you know, the practice to get ready for our conference tournament at the end of February.
Yeah.
So it's a great prelude to that, where we get a chance to practice it, you know, and then really, you know, what we're going after for the MAC.
And was that part of the idea of moving the tournament up to where it resides now on the calendar?
Exactly. We wanted to move it into season rather than after season, kind of have it a natural spot to give these teams a little bit more in-season activity, and a lot of that is, you know, placing for when they're ready, plus giving teams an ability to see different type of teams and different styles to get them ready for their own conference championships, and for a lot of these teams, it's for the national championship.
Well, your team is 11-4 right now. Had a 5-game winning streak come to an end on Friday. What's the pulse of this team right now, as far as you see it?
Right. Well, halfway through the year right now, approximately, and really got a really good group of kids. And you know, we've battled some injuries, but I've had some kids step up into the role of leader that we weren't expecting. A young man named Anthony Garcia recently has really taken on the role, as some of the injuries have hit us, of kind of being a team leader. And it's good to see him. He was always kind of one of the guys that was in the background, but he learned from that, and now he's ready to step up. And so it's great to see that growth to come, you know, into play for all of the kids, not just the kids that you depend on as your stars.
And speaking of growth, back on December 13th, St. James played St. Maria Goretti. St. Maria Goretti came away with a 12-point win in that one, so they essentially got home court for the IPSL Championship, where you'll play them again coming up this Sunday. What do you hope to see from your team, other than coming out with a win this time around, that would be different from the first time?
Well, I think improvement is always what all the coaches are looking for. You know, we're always looking to improve and get ourselves ready for our main conference. You know, for us, it's the MAC, and for Goretti, the BCL. And to, you know, and do things that we need to practice in order to get to that next step. And, you know, having a team across town to be able to do that with is always a fun time, and I think it's fun for a lot of people. So, you know, we need to improve on what we did last time, you know, and that's where we get to, you know, compare ourselves to where we came from and to where we're at this Sunday.
And that'll be 5 o'clock on Sunday at St. Maria Goretti. The girls, St. James and St. Maria Goretti, will play prior to that. 3 o'clock, that'll be at St. James. They just make that 7.5-mile trip across town, girls and then the boys. Coach, thanks so much for being here.
Appreciate your time. This is great.
Yeah, good luck with the St. James Invitational. I know a lot of time goes into it, and hopefully we touched on that just a little bit, because I'm telling you, this guy has put so much into this. Hopefully you'll all come out and enjoy that, because that is a brand of basketball that is just off the charts. Next week on the show, we'll talk more basketball. One of our focuses will be the CMC championships relative to indoor track and field. That's next time. Thanks for watching this time, and I'll see you then on the inside.
Hey, your sisters and your brothers, your haters and your lovers, you gotta get up in the streets. Hey, don't complain to mother, they hiding under